believe in God or you don't, whether you believe Torah is the real deal or not, everything that I'm about to say applies. Because without getting into a whole discussion of faith in God or faith in Torah, the Holy Bible, without getting into any of that, we can just simply realize and recognize that for the last 3,334 years, since the Mount Sinai occurrence, whether you believe it or not, but by the way, the word Mount Sinai also is the word for the mountain of hatred. Isn't that interesting, given the world events right now? So whether you believe it or not, you'll notice that the Jews are in this like cycle. We're always inside this cycle. And the way the cycle works, the way it comes around is basically, you know, that in Judaism, you're given heaps of free will, because we don't have like idols and we don't have Jesus and we don't have like, there's nothing to point to. And also, I mean, don't trust me on this, but Jews have pretty high IQ. And what happens with that high IQ is you start to say, I never met God. I never saw God. Like, you can easily just dismiss God because, hey, I never met him. I never saw him. Nothing. I don't recall anything happening to me too out of the ordinary that I would believe in God. And what happens after a while is you just kind of get to the space of that the God is like, if there is one, he's playing golf today or something because he's on vacation. And here's the issue, though. The issue with that is that if you basically believe that God's not around, so then you start to believe that, well, since God's not paying too much attention, so he certainly wouldn't be paying too much attention to my personal observance. And maybe he's not even paying any attention to a whole community's personal observance. Like, for example, when I grew up, there was Reform and Conservative Jews, meaning whole groups that were basically, I guess, figuring that God must be playing softball with us because, we haven't been hit by any hardballs. And so it must be softball. And maybe it's not even softball. It's like Nerf ball, or it's like, or how about no ball? Because it doesn't seem like he's involved at all, actually. Because, hey, look at the world, look at the science, follow the science, look at the mechanistic, materialist, atheist ways of that you can just have the world run. Like, maybe he spun it like a top and took off ever since then. Or maybe he doesn't exist at all. Anyway, the bottom line is that you start to believe that, maybe there's no God. And the problem with that is that the actual covenant with God is a very, very tough covenant. It is very tough. Like, for example, just when Isaac gave blessing to Jacob, who basically tricked him, dressed up as his twin brother Esav. When he did that, so Esav came in afterwards and says, "Father, do you have a blessing for me?" And Esav said, and Isaac said, "No, I gave it to Jacob, your brother." And he's like, "But he tricked me. And don't you have one more blessing?" He's crying, a terrible cry. And at that point, Isaac gives him a bracha, and he basically says, "You're going to live by the sword." And which is exactly what happened. And now when you go in the commentaries there, it explains that when Jacob doesn't do his job, so then Esav gets to live by his sword, meaning he gets to come after Jacob. Esav's not happy about Jacob, like not at all happy about Jacob. He's not happy about what happened there and the stealing of the blessing and even the birthright that he bought for that Jacob bought by selling Esav, his brother, a bowl of soup. He lost his birthright. He lost the blessing. And he was basically out to kill Jacob, which is why Jacob took off for the next 22 years to Syria and got, that's where he was married and began the 12 tribes. But the bottom line is not only is that story going to be harsh for the children of Israel, B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel, Jacob's other name is Israel, but also, when you go into the Torah itself, you see that at Mount Sinai, and also taking the Jews out of Egypt, that there's clearly, if you look at the storyline, it's clear that God's playing hardball. God plays hardball with the Jews, period. He is super, super rough when it comes to the Jewish people. And now, what does that mean? That means that when the Jews are doing their job on this earth, which is two jobs, there's an internal job, and that's to be in a relationship with God, doing the commandments, and being good boys and girls. So then things go well for the Jews. And also outside that, the Jews are meant to be what's called a mamleches kohanim, or a nation of priests, which means if the entire Jewish people are the priesthood, that means the globe, meaning the global population, are the practitioners, meaning they're the people, while the entire Israel's the priesthood. A mamleches kohanim, a nation of priests. And also it's said in the Torah that we will be or lamim, a light unto the nations. And so the external job is for us to be that light, be light. But the problem is, now let's go back, is that what happens is that Jews who are like minding their own business as individuals, or even as groups that are anti, keeping the actual Torah, which I'll leave those groups nameless at this point on. What happens is they're kind of thinking like maybe there's no God, and if there is a God, he's definitely playing golf, and therefore he's just going to go easy, because he goes easy anyway, because I don't see him, and he's clearly playing softball. But that's very presumptuous. First of all, the whole point of free will is that God's hidden in creation, and so unless it's like some kind of very extenuating circumstance, God's probably going to stay in hiding mode and only showing himself through your daily, like literally every minute by minute by minute by minute by minute, but not clearly expressing himself as God. But I mean, think about it. Isn't the whole world orchestrated around you? Doesn't it feel that way when you walk through your day and interact with people? It's like, so you start to wonder if anyone has free will. Maybe everyone's here just for you, and you're just like the star of this film, which is the actual way God runs creation. He creates each one of us as if we're the only person on earth. And that's one of the saying of our sages, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, which means that the whole world was created for me, meaning you're the star of the movie. You are. Now, so here's the deal. The Jews don't like their charge, meaning their assignment from God. They don't like this charge. It's a burden. I'm not saying all the Jews, certainly my neighbors, I'm pretty into the charge. But a lot of people, they're not into the charge. Israelis, for example, the average secular Israeli is not interested at all in his job as a Jew. And they're just thinking like, yeah, like, where was God in the Holocaust or something? And they think that somehow that little line takes God out of the picture. But no, God's not out of the picture just because there was a Holocaust. And so what happens is that the nation of Israel, whether it be the Israelis or whether it be Jews all over the earth, are doing their own thing. But Jews are, as we said before, they're high IQ, they're powerful, they understand a lot of things, they understand complex things. In fact, the smarts of the Jews, I know everyone's called us everything in the book except dumb. Well, what is the smarts of the Jews? And the answer is the smarts of the Jews is their analysis. Our ability of analysis is very good. I hope you're following this analysis. Now, this ability to analyze means that you can take apart any business, including real estate, including banking, including stock market, you name it. We will rip it inside out and discover exactly how to use it to our benefit. And so unscrupulous people who are not keeping the Torah, they don't like the charge of Sinai, they don't want to do it, they don't think it is even pertaining to them, they feel it's just not, God's not involved. Well, God is involved, and he's very involved. anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is the alarm clock of the Jewish people, meaning when the Jews want to go to sleep, like Yonah, who went to sleep in the bottom of the ship, before the storm hit. The Jews sometimes just want to go to sleep. They don't like their job, and just like Jonah, he didn't like his job. He just wanted to go sleep at the bottom of the ship, but we've got a job, and when the Jews don't like the job, they want to asleep on the job. If they want to go to sleep, well, the Gentiles are the alarm clock. And here's something very deep that I want to share with you, and especially if you're a Gentile or a non-observant Jew, and that is that you don't actually hate the Jews. You're just hell-bent on waking them up. Your whole thing is just wake them up. Now, as far as what's the message coming to your mind may be hatred, and you may be pointing to every excuse the anti-Semitism ever had against the Jews, but you should know their excuses, because if you say one, the opposite should not be true. But yet you'll see whether you say one or the other, they come out true. Meaning, if you hold the Jews are poor, and you'll say they're parasites. If you hold they're rich, you'll say they cheated the system. Meaning, no matter what you do, it's because we're powerful, it's because we're weak, it's because we're and no matter what you choose, it's really just an excuse. What's really going on is that the job of the Gentiles of the planet is to wake up the Jewish people. That's their job, is to wake us up. Wake up the Jewish people so that the Jewish people can do what we're here for, because that means that 8 billion people are getting ripped off. Now, it turns out that, I'm into Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. Turns out that there is a certain amount of Gentiles for every Jew, meaning each priest of the Jewish people has a certain amount of Gentiles. Now, I don't know if it's an even breakdown, but let's just do the math in case it was. So if the even breakdown was, let's see, what's 8 billion divided by 14 million? So that would come out to 570 approximately. That'd be that for every Jew, let's say there's 14 million Jews, there are 570 approximate Gentiles. Now, of the Jewish world today, meaning those who are observant today, those who are Jewish today. Don't forget, everyone born to a Jewish woman is Jewish too. So that's like, God knows how many people from all the years of Jews assimilating. Don't forget, Hitler rose to power. By no coincidence, Hitler rose to power when Hitler rose to power in 1930s. By 1930, I think he rose to power in 1935. I'm not a history buff, but I think it was 1935. In 1930, Jews of Germany were 55% intermarried. Like where I grew up in Hollywood and like LA, like Jews didn't hit 50% intermarriage till the 1990s. Meaning because the ultimate sign that a Jew has fallen asleep completely is that they're no longer even interested in perpetuating it to the next generation. So it doesn't matter who they marry. You can marry out of the tribe. It doesn't matter anymore. And so that's the ultimate sign of Jews asleep. And today it's way above 50%. And most Jews won't even say they're Jewish on a census at this point. And you should know that about 10 years ago, over 6 million Jews, the same number killed in the Holocaust, already had disappeared from what should have been the projected growth of the Jewish people post-Holocaust. So we lost 6 million in the Holocaust. We lost 6 million in a silent scream, if you will, of assimilation, or otherwise known as the sleeping Jews. Now, but here's what I want to say, is that there's no reason to hate the Jews. The opposite. What can you do? What can you do to help Israel? And what can you do to help yourself? And the answer is find a Jew. Just find a Jew. He may not be your Jew. He's maybe not your priest, but it doesn't matter. Just find them. And when you find them, help them. Get them a book. Start them off on some kind of path. Turn them onto a website. Get them to my channel. Like, get the Jews back on board. Just tonight I was at a protest. I was coming back from mountain biking. I hear all kinds of screaming, which is rare for someone blasting music, but I could hear screaming. So I looked over and I see there's a giant protest and it was like ex-prime ministers were speaking, and it was like, we need to do re-election here in Israel because of a terrible job the current government's doing, and Netanyahu this and Netanyahu that. Nonsense. First of all, the state itself, meaning the leaders of the state of Israel, are those are the sleeping Jews. And so they have been going since the 1920s, when the secular Zionist movement began, since the 1920s, all the way to the Declaration of Independence in 1948, until this day. They are all about, okay, God's not around, but the Gentiles won't leave us alone, so we need a secure Israel. So we're gonna, build the state of Israel. But again, it's part of the whole, sleeping Judaism. So what you take for granted as a state of Israel, and is, whether you call them good or evil, the actual leaders, is all part of the slumber party. It's one big slumber party, and these people who want to oust the current government, and as if they have someone to take over in this mess we're in. Like there's no one's gonna be able to handle this. I mean, I don't think the leaders today are going to sleep every night going, oh, thank God I was in office for this one. Not at all. But again, they are part of the slumber. They're part of the sleepiness, and they also have to wake up. The whole country has to wake up. And you should know that when the state of Israel was established, it was not established by the observant Jews. In fact, they were very unhappy about the observant population. I mean, very unhappy. And I'm not going to tell you on YouTube some of the really bad things that transpired. But but you should know the observant community and the government, well, you may think they're bed buddies, but they're only bed buddies financially, meaning the observant communities, which is the fastest growing population of the country, need to pay their bills, meaning they got to pay their schools, they got to pay their communities, meaning their communities need government funds. And it's a very socialized system. And so it's like that pie just gets sliced up by whoever gets seats. And but they're not in it. They're not in it to win it, meaning they're not in the government because they are into the government at all. They're in it for one reason alone, and that's two reasons. One is to get the funds for their communities, and two is to do what they can to influence things toward Judaism and away from secular Zionism, toward Judaism, toward the mission, toward the charge, away from secular Zionism. And that's the only thing they're doing in the government, and that creates tremendous animosity in the country. People are very upset about them because they also don't even go to the army, and so they're not in the army, and their whole thing is to siphon money off of the government and to influence the government, and they're like, they don't work a lot. They're mostly studying the Torah, and this is ultimately not contributing to the state, which is, again, a state that wants to be fast asleep when it comes to the actual charge of Israel, meaning the charge of the Jewish people. So what can you do to help? Again, what you can do is find a Jew. Don't hate him, love him. Find a Jew, wake him up. Don't wake him up to Christianity. That's another loss. Meaning, let the Christian do his thing, but find that Jew. Find a Jew in your church and wake him up to Judaism. I'm telling you, if you think it's like a source of pride that you have a Jew in your church, or whatever kind of church you're in, or whatever kind of thing you're in, if you think that that's a source of pride, you see, even the Jew is part of us. No, that Jew was an ignoramus who didn't, most likely didn't have any idea about, God and Torah. And his first religious awakening was in your whatever. I don't know what you're part of. Find those Jews and bring them back in a loving, caring, beautiful way to God and to Torah. And they can start slow. There's no, you don't have to do the whole thing in one day. I'm the only one crazy enough to do that. You don't have to start everything in one day. Give them a 5-year plan. Give them a 10-year plan. Let them just start coming towards Judaism. And but you see that the wake up doesn't work as far as anti-Semitism. So let's just skip the anti-Semitic part because it doesn't work. What do you get? And what are you going to get if Gentiles are anti-Semitic to Jews, whether it be the local Arabs, Hamas, etc., or more distant ones, or Gentiles around the world who are protesting against Israel? All you're going to get is, the harder you hit the Jews, the more they're like, oh, poor us, poor us, poor us, poor us. And then they go back to victim mode. Jews aren't victims. We're priests. We're a nation of priesthood. We're not a nation of victims. So, what good did it do, the anti-Semitism? Yeah, okay. It reminded Jews that they're Jews. Good job. Yeah, but they knew they were Jews. They don't like it. What we got to do is in a loving, caring, and beautiful way, full of love, to bring the Jewish people home. We have to bring them home. And home starts with a belief in God. Home then goes to a knowledge of Torah. I mean, they got to learn some Torah. They have to understand something about it. And again, I know I said earlier, you don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in Torah for what I'm about to say. But if you just do the logic, what are we doing here 3,000 years later, still dealing with the exact same cycle over and over again? On a deeper level, we always have this question of what is God thinking? What is God up to? He better have about 100 of these worlds going on at the same time, because our world is one big disappointment. It's like, if this is really the story of history, and it's this pilot nation. I mean, obviously it was 2,400 years, 2,448 years, till we got the Torah. Easy to remember, 2448 from Adam to Mount Sinai is 2448. But so there was clearly 2.5 millennia of God relating to the whole planet. And ever since 2448, which is 3,334 years ago, it's God interacting to the planet through a nation of priests. But the priests are a bunch of lamos. The priests are no good as priests. And so God sends the Gentiles to wake them up. No going to sleep. Wake up. You're the Jews. But then the Jews go back into victimhood. And it's like, this doesn't work. So we need a new plan. And that new plan is no more anti-Semitism. Quite the opposite. You got to turn that hatred into a functional and practical expression. And that is love. And that is bringing the Jews back to Judaism. They have to get back to the job. They got to do their job in this world. And it'll be good for the world. That's the best thing that could ever happen to the whole planet. Everyone will be happy. And instead of a 2-state solution, you can have a 17-state solution, meaning let the Palestinians, which is this population that's grown here, let them be part of the other 17 Arab nations surrounding Israel, and let the children of Israel be in Israel. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I'll check the comments real quick, just see if there's anything interesting here. Someone said, Shalom Rabbi, your video is great. They have helped me a lot, especially videos about the loop. You made me enthusiastic about Judaism. Okay, that's nice. Okay, that's what I wanted to share today. And let's send this around and let's wake up the Jewish people right now. Blessings.